Okay, imagine trying to build a cinematic universe from absolute scratch. We're not just talking about your standard story of good guys punching bad guys, but a sweeping, epic, cosmic narrative deeply rooted in theology, philosophy, and massive universal stakes. Well, welcome to today's Explainer. We are breaking down a really unusual, highly fascinating piece of source material that literally serves as a creative blueprint for exactly that kind of project. We're going to examine the specific creative advice and philosophical frameworks laid out in the text for a Japanese animated film called The Laws of the Universe, The Age of Elohim. As you'll see, the text proposes a total radical reimagining of heroism, morality, and even historical religious figures. Now, to really get this blueprint, we have to look at its wild premise first. The text we're analyzing is actually presented as a spiritual consultation. It explicitly frames its guidance as a channeled interview with the guardian spirit of Stan Lee, the legendary American comic creator, happening right around the time of his passing. Now, whether you view this as a literal spiritual dialogue or just a highly unique narrative framing device, our goal today is to impartially unpack the actual creative advice it delivers. The text basically uses this persona to eject classic American superhero sensibilities into a Japanese cosmic narrative, demanding a much bolder, more complex approach to world building.
So here is our game plan for today. We'll be looking at 1. New cosmic heroes, 2. The philosophy of justice, and 3. Reimagining mythos. All right, let's jump right into part 1, new cosmic heroes beyond the formula.
To build this new universe, the source establishes that fresh characters are an absolute necessity. It actually specifically warns against lazily repeating past character formulas. So note bringing back a previous 5-person team featuring a familiar character named Aisuke, for example. The core argument here is that cosmic threats require cosmic-level defenders, right? The text insists that the creators have to introduce entirely new archetypes who bring unique, specialized skills and extraterrestrial backgrounds to the table. You just can't rely on the comfortable nostalgia of past protagonists. Enter Yaezel, who is pitched as a brand new primary hero. She's a fierce female warrior dispatched specifically from the Vega star system. And she isn't just your generic sci-fi fighter. She is equipped with unique transformation abilities. This is a very deliberate choice to bring a completely new extraterrestrial dynamic to the story, highlighting that Earth's defense is actually just one part of a much larger, interconnected galactic network. The text also dives into highly specialized roles. Take Pangoro, for example. He's a character designed with a singular, localized mission, to be the direct protector of the Earth god. By pairing Vega warriors from deep space with these divine bodyguards, the creators are advised to ground the massive cosmic stakes with highly purpose-driven, localized roles. Literally, everyone has a very specific job in this cosmic ecosystem.
Moving right along to Section 2, the philosophy of justice and evil.
You know, all the punches and explosions in the world don't really matter if the philosophical clash isn't clearly defined. And this breakdown brilliantly illustrates the fundamental war of values at play here. On one side, you have the invaders, identified as reptilians, who operate on a brutal, predatory ideology, survival of the fittest, consuming others, and total dominance by sheer brute force. On the flip side, the Earth's defenders are defined not just by their combat power, but by an ideology of high spiritual enlightenment. Their entire core tenet is self-sacrifice for the sake of justice and protecting their compatriots. Here's the really crucial part. The text defines true heroism as an actual spiritual achievement. Achieving this specific enlightenment to being willing to sacrifice yourself to protect your compatriots is literally what prevents a soul from falling to hell. That's a huge stake. Conversely, those driven solely by self-preservation and selfish desires, they're the ones who fall. So, heroism here is explicitly tied to spiritual purity and selfless action, perfectly contrasting with the selfish, predatory survival of the invaders. To deepen this conflict even more, the text pulls in this really fascinating philosophical metaphor, Robinson Crusoe. It points out that if you are completely alone on an isolated island, the very concepts of good and evil don't even exist. There's literally no one to wrong and no one to help. Good and evil only emerge when we're forced to coexist with diverse beings, the other. The more diverse the beings in the universe, the more complex coexistence becomes. And that is exactly why a cosmic story of this scale requires such a rigorous definition of justice. Which brings us to our final section, reimagining mythos, specifically Jesus and Lucifer. So how do you ground these massive, abstract cosmic stakes for an audience? Well, the source argues you actually have to radically reinterpret some pretty major religious figures. Let's look at Jesus Christ.
The text explicitly argues that in a universe threatened by predatory, planet-consuming evil, a hero cannot rely solely on passive, lukewarm love or unconditional non-resistance. To actively combat a force like the reptilians or a cosmic Satan, the definition of divine love has to evolve into something much more active, forceful, and defensive. According to the advice in this book, Jesus must be depicted as a fierce frontline defender. The text literally states he has a fierce personality, noting that he's even fiercer and less mild than Buddha. He possesses a wrathful aspect, designed to physically confront malevolent forces and force a massive paradigm shift. It's a completely bold transformation of a figure traditionally associated strictly with peace, turning him into a powerful cosmic warrior. On the other hand, the text advises making the ultimate villains deeply tragic and psychologically complex. It doesn't just handwave the bad guys, it maps out the psychological descent of Lucifer step by step. He doesn't just start as a monster. He starts by achieving massive success and merit. But that success, it breeds blinding arrogance and pride that morphs into intense jealousy toward God and his teachings, ultimately leading to a rebellion that triggers the dramatic creation of hell itself. This passage outlines a vision where Lucifer arrogantly proclaims, "My achievements were great," fully believing his individual power trumps absolutely everything else. The text advises creators to ensure the origin of hell isn't just some random piece of background lore. Instead, it needs to be depicted as a dramatic, character-driven tragedy rooted entirely in Lucifer's fatal flaw: his utter refusal to value teamwork and coexistence over his own immense, unchecked ego. Okay, let's wrap this up. What are our key takeaways here? To summarize, this source material constructs a highly detailed blueprint for a deeply philosophical superhero narrative. By weaving together fresh, specialized characters like Yazael, establishing high-stakes morality based on self-sacrifice, and boldly reimagining historical figures like a fierce Jesus and a tragic Lucifer, it really pushes the boundaries of traditional anime storytelling straight into the realm of cosmic theology. Which leaves us with a really fascinating question to ponder about world-building and storytelling. When the stakes are literally the survival of a planet against a brutal predatory force, where exactly should the line be drawn between passive, unconditional love and the fierce, active justice required to protect the innocent? It's a pretty compelling thought to end on. Thanks for joining me on this explainer, and keep questioning the blueprints behind the stories we consume.
All right, let's get right into it. Welcome to the Explainer. Today we're diving into a document that is just mind-blowing. We're going to break down a wildly unique movie scenario pitch. It literally takes the blockbuster scale of modern superhero movies and mashes it up with this incredibly deep, complex framework of spiritual and cosmic lore. So, whether you're into storytelling structures, esoteric myths, or just, wildly imaginative sci-fi concepts, this source material is an absolute goldmine of ideas. And we're going to map it all out for you today.
Right off the bat, the source material hits you with this imagery of a devastating meteor striking the Earth, right alongside a portrait of the legendary comic book creator Stan Lee. Now, the text we're unpacking today, specifically Chapter 2, recorded back on July 21, 2018, claims to be a spiritual interview. It offers messages from the purported guardian spirit of Stan Lee himself, presenting direct advice and a scenario pitch for an animated film titled The Laws of the Universe, The Age of Elohim. It's a completely unique document that merges modern pop culture creators with profound, ancient religious concepts. We're going to impartially report on exactly what this text proposes, because it's a wild ride.
So here's our roadmap for this explainer. First up, the unexpected crisis and new enemies. Second, cosmic defense and heroes. And third, the secret of Stan Lee's soul. Let's jump in.
Part 1, Unexpected Crisis and New Enemies. According to this pitch, you can't just start a movie with your run-of-the-mill invasion, right? It outlines this escalating three-step crisis. Step 1 kicks off with a massive meteor bomb sent to completely shatter the Earth, specifically targeting what the text calls the Alpha Civilization. When that meteor totally fails to destroy the planet, boom, we hit Step 2. Massive swarms of UFOs and flying saucers suddenly arrive from unknown star systems, including Beta Centauri. And finally, Step 3 reveals the true mastermind. The text describes a future enemy, an adversary who uses time-warping technology to travel back into the past, trying to turn the Earth into a literal hell before a brighter future can even be established. Now, here is the kicker: the setting. This massive conflict, it isn't happening in modern-day New York or Tokyo. The pitch scenario places the near destruction of Earth deep in prehistoric times, specifically 150 million years ago. The text explains that this era is chosen as the primary battleground because it's the Age of Elohim. The entire purpose of this cosmic war and this whole time-traveling invasion revolves around whether the Earth's spiritual center, the Palace of Elohim, can be protected from total annihilation.
Part 2. Cosmic Defense and Heroes.
The source text almost like well, actually, scratch that. It reads exactly like a director's battle plan, strictly dividing the heroes into two very distinct tactical camps. On the offense side, you've got the main attacking force, led by a hero named Yezel, whose whole job is to take the fight directly to the invaders. Then, over on the defense side, the force is anchored by figures named Pangal and Seraphim. The text actually notes specific visual details for them, like Pangal wielding a flaming sword, and their primary directive is to stay back, hold the line, and form an impenetrable defense to protect Elohim from the invasion.
So who are these heroes actually fighting, and what are they packing? The text gets super specific here. The enemies are described as malicious, spider-type aliens known as the Dahar. To fight them, the pitch advises treating the defenders almost like a modern superhero team. It suggests granting these ancient heroes specific psychic abilities, superpowers that viewers today would instantly recognize. Plus, because they're ancient humans facing a highly advanced cosmic threat, they're equipped with specialized, historically grounded weapons. We're talking bows, spears, and swords that are infused with the power to completely counter these insectoid aliens.
And all of this builds up to a massive, truly infinite cinematic climax. The pitch describes a wild sequence where Yaziel systematically defeats the Spider Children, causing the rest of the Spider-type Dahar to panic and flee into the depths of space. But Yaziel doesn't just let them go, he pursues them, flying through the cosmos, chasing them to the very edges of the universe. The text suggests ending this epic pursuit with a massive, blinding flash of light. They liken it to a hydrogen bomb, leaving the ultimate fate of the enemy ambiguous, but firmly confirming that the Palace of Elohim is safe.
All of this epic, cinematic world-building really begs the question, doesn't it? If this is a pitch for an ancient cosmic war, who exactly does the text claim is the storyteller behind these gods and heroes?
Part 3. The Secret of Stan Lee's Soul. The source material drops this absolutely fascinating English quote. It reads, "I am the father of Spider-Man. I am the father of Black Panther. I am the father of Incredible Hulk. I am the father of X-Men, Captain America, and Mighty Thor. I am the father of gods." The text neutrally positions this creator not just as a legendary comic book writer in our physical world, but as a literal divine designer of heroes in the spiritual realm. Basically, it claims his job in the afterlife is to conceptualize gods in the form of heroes that humanity can easily understand and look up to. And then the text goes even further. It quotes, "I created a lot of gods in my history and in this Earth's history. Yeah, I produced a lot of gods." The really crucial point the text makes here is that this legendary creator claims to work right alongside supreme spiritual figures, specifically a being referred to as El Cantare, to essentially design the Earth's spiritual blueprint. The source outlines this dynamic where El Cantare needs a splendid creator to formulate the avatars of justice and heroism throughout Earth's history, and this spirit proudly claims that role as his own.
So let's tie all of this back to that grand movie scenario we started with. The text claims that during that massive space battle 150 million years ago, the Age of Elohim, this storyteller was the actual literal architect behind the hero's abilities. When Yaziel, Pangal, and Seraphim were fighting off those time-manipulating spider aliens, the source material states it was this very soul whose job it was to provide those ancient heroes with their specific superpowers, their flaming swords, and their specialized weapons. To this spirit, the pitch isn't just a cool movie idea. According to the text, it's a recounting of a historical design he personally oversaw.
Which brings us to the end of our breakdown, leaving us with a pretty wild, provocative thought. If we look through the lens of this source material, where storytelling is framed as an actual divine act of spiritual design, what hidden cosmic blueprints might exist in the movies we watch today? It's a fascinating way to look at pop culture, viewing our modern blockbuster heroes, not just as ink on a page or pixels on a screen, but as modern translations of ancient cosmic defense mechanisms. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer. Keep asking questions, and I hope this sparks your curiosity to look just a little closer at the stories we tell.
Okay, let's dive right into this explainer.
Today we're unpacking a truly fascinating, deeply layered text that takes the pop culture icons we all know and love and filters them through a vast, cosmic, and spiritual lens. We're looking at a spiritual interview with the guardian spirit of Stan Lee, one of the greatest creators of modern mythology. It's an exploration of superheroes, but definitely not from the perspective of comic book sales or movie box office numbers. Instead, this source material looks at the spiritual philosophy, the cosmic origins, and the hidden divine purpose behind these characters. It's a wild, incredibly imaginative ride, and we're going to break down exactly what this text claims, step by step.
We are focusing specifically on Chapter 3 of the Laws of the Universe, the Age of Elohim. This chapter is presented as a recorded spiritual interview, a dialogue meant to unpack the cosmic and spiritual philosophy behind the superheroes that absolutely dominate our modern screens. The text frames this as advice given by the guardian spirit of Stan Lee for an animated movie project. Our goal today is to impartially map out the exact ideas presented in this fascinating chapter, looking at how it bridges the gap between comic book pages and esoteric spiritual beliefs.
Here's our roadmap for today. 1. The true essence of a hero. 2. Ordinary people and democracy. 3. Imagination and alien hypotheses. 4. Stan Lee's astonishing past lives. And 5. God's rules for the space age.
All right, kicking things off with Section 1, the true essence of a hero. What exactly makes a superhero?
When you think of superheroes, you probably think of capes, gadgets, and huge action sequences, right? But this text argues that the foundational purpose of a superhero is actually something much more profound. It claims a hero is literally a disguised role of God. The guardian spirit in this interview says that in our modern world, folks often find it incredibly difficult to actually picture God in their minds. We aren't all saints or prophets, you know? So to bridge that gap, heroes were created. The text argues that these characters step in as modern-day gods. Just like a priest or a prophet might deliver teachings in a church, this creator states he delivered divine inspiration and moral teachings through the creative field of movies. By creating characters like Spider-Man or the X-Men, he was essentially building a modern pantheon to give everyday people courage and hope.
Moving on to Section 2, Ordinary People and Democracy, and the Origin of American Power.
The formula at the heart of this mythology is simple, but it really packs a punch. Take your totally ordinary human being, maybe even someone who feels a bit out of place or less than ordinary, and combine them with a crazy superpower, like the abilities of a spider. When you merge these two completely different things, something magical happens. A new hero is born. But the source material takes this a step further. It argues that this specific narrative, an ordinary person suddenly transforming into a hero, is actually the very source of American power. It claims this transformation is the literal power source of democratic ideals, proving that greatness can emerge from absolutely any everyday citizen.
That brings us to Section 3, Imagination and Alien Hypotheses, where we expand out into the cosmos. We're zooming way out now, from the streets of New York City to a much larger cosmic scale. The interview addresses the realities of what it calls the space age, and it makes a really bold philosophical assertion here. God is imagination itself. The guardian spirit explains that because humans are a copy of the divine, the limits of God are exactly equal to the limits of our own imagination. If you can imagine something, it can be realized in the universe. The source gives a pretty great visual example for this. If you can imagine a snake, God can create a snake. But if you stretch your imagination to picture a snake that's 50 meters long, well, you've essentially just created a dragon. Therefore, any wild superpower or alien life form we can conceptualize is well within the realm of cosmic reality.
Building on that idea of limitless imagination, the text then tackles the topic of aliens visiting Earth. The guardian spirit lays out 3 distinct, fascinating hypotheses for why extraterrestrials might be here. Step 1. They are the ancient gods of the past, simply returning to quietly watch over the growth of humanity, kind of like parents checking in on their kids. Step 2. There is a greater, almighty God who has laid down strict rules for interacting with Earth, and these alien visitors are just strictly obeying those divine laws. Step 3. The universe is huge and full of differing opinions, but major space leagues have formed with a strong will to actively protect us Earthlings from other hostile space invaders. And the craziest part? The text suggests that all 3 of these theories might actually hold true at the exact same time.
Now for Section 4, Stan Lee's astonishing past lives. This is quite the cosmic journey.
Okay, get ready, because we're about to dive into the most surprising and esoteric claims within this entire source material. We are moving from external aliens to the internal cosmic origins of the soul itself. The timeline starts way back in ancient times, claiming the soul actually originates from a place called Planet Stan Lee. During this era, the spirit claims to have served as a conversation partner for the supreme being El Cantare, and, get this, actually claims to have designed the giant panda. He apparently pitched it as the perfect black and white design. Moving forward, the text asserts he was born in ancient Greece as Zeus, the father of gods and heroes, then as the biblical patriarch Abraham. Fast forward to the 16th century, and a branch of this Zeus spirit reincarnated as a part of the legendary playwright William Shakespeare, representing the god of art. Finally, in a huge geographical twist, the text claims that during the creation of the Japanese archipelago, this exact same soul acted as the god of Mount Fuji, a volcano god who helped design Japan. Talk about a sweeping cosmic resume, right?
Which brings us to our final part, Section 5, God's Rules for the Space Age, and some actionable philosophy.
It is so easy to get lost in the sheer scale of giant pandas, Zeus, Abraham, and space leagues, so let's ground this esoteric journey back into something a bit more practical. What does this all mean for how we should actually live? Well, the Guardian Spirit outlines 4 specific rules of God that both heroes and humanity must protect in this new space age. First, love God and love others. Second, actively seek out spiritual things, so looking beyond just our material world. Third, use your free will to carve out your own destiny, which ties right back to those democratic ideals we talked about earlier. And fourth, bring happiness to others. The text emphasizes that throughout history, through churches and shrines, these teachings have been passed down. And when these rules are broken, bringing chaos and confusion to Earth, that is exactly when a hero has to appear to protect the rules and restore justice.
As we wrap up this analysis, this quote brilliantly summarizes the heart of the text's argument. Ryuho Okawa concludes the session by stating that the real heroes aren't necessarily the politicians or the CEOs. Instead, creators are the real God of America. Why? Because through their art, their incredible stories, and their boundless imagination, creators are the ones giving dreams to the people of the future, especially the children. They literally shape the moral and spiritual landscape of the next generation.
So the text leaves us really pondering the profound impact of creativity and mythology on our society. It forces us to ask ourselves, in a world where ordinary folks can tap into such extraordinary ideas, who is shaping your imagination? Who is the true hero that gives dreams to the future for you? Take a second to think about that. Thank you so much for joining me on this incredible exploration of the source material today. I hope this explainer helped you see your favorite stories in a whole new cosmic light.